In the age after the Great Sith Wars, when the galaxy believed the dark side had been broken and scattered, it did not vanish, it only withdrew. In the quiet spaces between the stars, beyond the reach of the Jedi, entire noble houses endured in secrecy. These were not warlords or conquerors, but ancient dynasties who believed themselves the rightful inheritors of Sith knowledge. They did not rule through open tyranny, they ruled through refinement, secrecy, and dominion. Within these hidden courts, Sith philosophy was preserved not as dogma, but more as culture. Holocrons were studied in private chambers, rituals were practiced behind sealed doors, and power was not shouted, it was whispered. These nobles saw themselves as the true stewards of the dark side, custodians of an older, purer tradition untouched by chaos that had destroyed the Sith Empire of old. They existed in a constant state of quiet rivalry. Great houses vied for prestige not through conquest, but through mastery of the blade, of knowledge, of bloodlines, of art. Their wars were subtle, waged through influence, assassination, and ritual duels fought behind closed doors. To rule was not to conquer, but to outclass. At the center of this rare culture stood what many considered to be the most beautiful and intricate lightsaber designs in all of Star Wars lore, as well as the creation of a saber that would one day completely go extinct. What we're speaking of today is known as the Lightfoil. The Lightfoil was not merely a simple weapon, it was the ultimate expression of status, lineage, and ultimately skill with the blade. Each was a masterpiece forged from rare alloys and infused with crystals drawn from distant systems, their hues ranging from deep crimson to pale emerald to shimmering gold. These blades were as much jewelry as they were armament, their elegance reflecting the prestige of their bearer. Entire galactic fortunes were poured into their creation. Noble houses stripped moons of resources, emptied vaults, and ruined rivaled families in order to acquire the finest of materials. The Lightfoil became a living ledger of power. Every gemstone represented a conquest, every curve a declaration of one's supremacy. To wield such a lightsaber was to announce one's place in the hierarchy. Only the most refined and disciplined were permitted to carry one. It was a society where the blade was the rank, the duel was law, and victory was legitimacy. Thus, in the shadow of the Republic of the time, a secret aristocracy thrived, bound not by armies or banners, but by elegance, by ambition, and a quiet certainty that true power needed no witnesses. When the 12 Dark Jedi were cast out and cast themselves upon the worlds of the Sith, they carried with them more than hatred and ambition. They carried the scars of an endless war. Their rise was shaped by battle, and from the beginning, strength was proven through the blade. Power was not to be inherited, it was taken. And in those early centuries, the duel became the purest expression of one's dominance over another. From this crucible emerged figures like Tulak Horde, whose mastery of combat became legend. To the early Sith, the blade was not simply a weapon, but it represented an extension of will, the truest measure of supremacy. Victory in a duel was authority made manifest. The one who prevailed ruled, and the one who fell was forgotten. It stood like this for thousands of years, until the Great Sith War ended, and the Sith were officially scattered. The philosophy of the blade didn't die, it only fractured. Fragments of Sith tradition survived in secrecy, passed down through bloodlines and hidden heirs. Among them were those who would become known as the Mecrosa Order, heirs not to the Sith Empire itself, but to its martial soul. But the Makrosa were a rare type of Sith. Unlike the Dark Lords who had conquered before them, they did not seek galactic dominion, they turned inward. Their world became one of lineage, prestige, and ritualized combat. They preserved the art of the duel not as a means to conquer the galaxy, but as a means to define superiority within their own hidden society. Where the ancient Sith wielded the Force as a path to godhood, the Makrosa inverted that hierarchy. To the Mecrosa Order, the blade came first. The Force existed only to serve it, to sharpen reaction, to heighten precision, and to elevate one's technique. They viewed the Force only as a tool, not as a calling. In this way, they strayed from the path of the Sith even as they inherited its remnants and lore. Over generations, this philosophy would harden into doctrine and belief. Mastery of the lightsaber became the ultimate measure of one's worth. Those who failed to excel were cast out. Those who succeeded ruled. Their duels were not spectacles of rage, but ritualized assertions of supremacy. They were more ceremonies of blood, steel, and fine metal. In this devotion, the Makrosa crossed a quiet threshold. Though born of Sith tradition, they ceased to truly be Sith at all. They became something else, a dark side cousin of the Sith that didn't worship the Force, but they worshipped the lightsaber, and they worshipped what the lightsaber had represented, a mean and a measure of dominance and power. And if you were skilled with the lightsaber, you deserved endless power. To the historians of the Jedi, this was the moment that they ceased to be Sith and became something more insular, a noble order obsessed not with the dark side itself, but with the perfection of the blade. Yet, it was in the duel that the true soul of the order revealed itself. They did not fight, they performed. Their devotion to Form 2 Makashi elevated combat into something approaching ritualized art, where other forms relied on strength or aggression to keep one off balance. Makashi demanded restraint, balance, and absolute command of the body. Every step, every thrust, every turn of the wrist, and measured strike was deliberate. There was no wasted motion, no frantic clash of blades, only ever control. To witness a Makrosa duel was to witness something closer to a dance than a battle. Blades traced arcs of light through the air, precise and fluid, moving with a rhythm that felt almost ceremonial, beautiful. Two figures would circle one another, probing, testing, each movement carrying layers of meaning understood only by those trained in the discipline. It was beauty weaponized, elegance sharpened into lethality. Makrosa believed that true supremacy was revealed not through brute force, but through refinement. Strength was common, but precision and mastery was rare, even divine. In the duels, victory was often decided long before the final blow. A single misstep, a fraction of a hesitation, an imperceptible flaw in posture. They all separated dominance from death. When the decisive moment came, it arrived cleanly, almost mercifully. A flash of light, a fall, and silence. And in that silence, the authority was settled. Such was the creed of Makrosa. Their mastery of Makashi became not just a fighting style, but a philosophy. The blade was an extension of the self. The duel was a proving ground, and to triumph was to prove one's right to rule. To falter was to be unmade. It was through this lens that they judged all things, and it was this belief that would shape their fate long before the galaxy ever would learn their name. The Lightfoil became more than a weapon. It became a testament to an age that believed beauty itself represented power. For the wealthiest of their order, they were forged with resources stripped from entire worlds. The finest metals and rarest crystals were poured into each and every hilt and every blade. Gemstones from distant systems embedded into hilts not for ornament alone, but as declaration of dominance, proof that the wielder commanded wealth, influence, and a lineage beyond measure. Every single Lightfoil was a singular creation, shaped by master artisans and refined through generations. They were passed down, the balance tuned to a single hand, its form perfected through ritual combat. The Lightfoil was never mass-produced. They were inherited, fought over, and in some cases, destroyed in duels meant to decide succession and honor. When a noble fell, their blade was often shattered or claimed, its components absorbed into a new weapon, a cycle of death and rebirth that mirrored the very culture of the Sith themselves. But over time, fewer and fewer Lightfoils remained. As the Sith retreated deeper into secrecy, the hidden empire of Darth Vitiate rose and stirred in the shadows. The world that had birthed the Lightfoil began to collapse. The Makrosa turned inward, consumed by rivalry and tradition. Their numbers dwindled, their secrets fragmented, and as the Sith unified under a singular will, the old aristocratic order faded to irrelevance. The Lightfoil slowly became a relic of a forgotten philosophy and a forgotten people. In the later centuries, Jedi scholars would speak of these weapons with reverent tones, not as the typical Sith lightsaber tools of war, but as artifacts of a lost age. Jedi called it the most beautiful representation and expression of the dark side ever forged. Not brutal or monstrous, but deliberate, refined, dangerous, and overwhelmingly beautiful. Collectors, warlords, shadow syndicates would hunt for surviving examples, paying fortunes beyond measure. Imitations would flood the underworld, elegant, hollow replicas mimicking the look but lacking the soul. For the truth was simple, the Lightfoil could never be recreated. It belonged in a time when power was art, and when the galaxy finally moved on, that art would vanish with it, leaving behind only legends, the fragments, the memory of a blade so beautiful that it literally became myth. So what do you think of the Lightfoil? It's one of those rare weapons in Star Wars that feels genuinely different. It's not just different in design, but in its philosophy for the Sith. It is shorter than a standard lightsaber, meant to be wielded with one hand, and almost exclusively paired with Form 2. The Lightfoil is not about brute force or battlefield dominance, it's about mastery. It's a weapon meant for the duel, not for war. But what makes it more fascinating is how unclear its legacy is. Depending on the source, the Makrosa are described as Sith, Sith-aligned, or something just outside of both. At times, they're portrayed as true dark side adherents, steeped in tradition. At other points, they're depicted as something closer to a secretive noble order, assassins, aristocrats, power brokers who operate only in the shadows, borrowing Sith philosophy without ever fully belonging to the Sith themselves. But that ambiguity is part of what makes them compelling. They exist in the strange gray space where ideology and ambition overlap, a culture that rose to prominence through refinement, secrecy, and hiding, only to eventually fracture under its own excess. Their obsession with beauty and ritual led to them creating something extraordinary, but also eventually their undoing. Because like so many things in Sith history, the Lightfoil represents brilliance and self-destruction. It was a masterpiece born from obsession, and like the order that created it, it burned brightly before fading into legend. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the more lesser-known corners of Star Wars lore, the Forgotten Orders, the secret traditions, the weapons history buried beneath the lines, then make sure to subscribe and join the archives. There's always more hidden history for you to uncover. But wherever your path may take you next, may the Force be with you.